In the year 1312, in this desolate region of Africa, resided the richest man to have ever lived, whose wealth was so great it is often referred to as limitless and immeasurable. Aside from this measurement estimating his wealth at around $400 billion. When people think of the Middle Ages, your mind typically runs to knights in shining armor, saving princesses, or the bubonic plague and the Crusades, rather than events like the Mongols conquering almost all of Eurasia. Or this man, the richest man to have ever lived. His name was Mansa Musa, or King Musa, the man who, on a visit to Cairo, managed to spend so much gold, he destabilized the economy of Egypt for more than a decade. Musa was the king of a West African civilization, the Mali Empire. This empire spanned over 500,000 square miles, encompassing nearly all the land between the Sahara Desert and the coastal forests. Musa came to power in 1312 as his predecessor Abu Bakr II appointed him to rule the empire while he was away exploring the Atlantic, only to never return. Though no evidence, some say he may have discovered the Americas, perhaps found a nice Latina lady and settled down. Or more likely, he lies in Davy Jones's locker. Musa inherited an already wealthy kingdom, but he would go on to forge this into the richest empire the world has ever known, even richer than the Romans. But how did this man in the middle of the Sahara Desert amass this wealth? The answer is simple. Musa enforced highway tolls. The Empire of Mali produced an abundance of resources, including various crops, copper, gold, and equally, if not more valuable than gold, salt. Naturally occurring salt was sparse in the region, yet a necessity for the people. It was used to preserve meat and was crucial for the survival of traders making the long journey across the Sahara. The Sahara held a natural source of rock salt, making Mali the dominant supplier for the region. Mali's salt was mined in the north at Tagaza and was carried in the form of large tablets on the backs of camels across the desert. In the south, on the other hand, Mali's gold was mined in abundance. This area, known as Bambouk, was the source of half of the world's gold supply. Though Musa's wealth did not primarily come from directly ruling the actual source of these materials, the fundamental reason Musa's economy flourished was simply because of trade. Trade that Musa allowed to happen freely and unrestricted. The empire's geographical positioning along the Niger River basin situated it at the crossroads of several major trans-Saharan trade routes. Mansa Musa expanded the territory of his empire to gain control over these routes, and it worked. Tripling trade under his rule, Musa was able to tax every ounce of gold, copper, salt, or whatever else may have passed through his borders, ensuring a steady flow of wealth. Rather than enforcing direct control over the salt and gold fields, Musa was content with a combination of tribute from the miners and taxation from the traders that dealt with them. This would avoid costly and complex logistical operations for the empire. The strategy resulted in an enormous amount of income, so much so that during this period even Portugal's currency was indirectly based on Malian gold. To encourage traders to use his routes, Musa invested in infrastructure that would offer a safe journey through the harsh Sahara. The infrastructure supplied protection from bandits and offered places to eat and rest along the way. This created a route popular for traders of Chinese silk, Persian fabrics, Indian spices, European metalwork, and Arabian horses, all of which were subject to taxation and tribute. Musa had a different idea when it came to expanding his empire, and that was to not kill anyone.
What?
Rather than take by force, he peacefully annexed the city of Timbuktu and re-established power over the city of Gao. This gained him control over vital trade routes between the Mediterranean and the West African coast. Musa's approach to governing redefined what it meant to be an empire for Mali. Unlike the Roman, the Mongol, and other empires characterized by constant war and carnage, the Mali Empire was no such thing. The Mansas were not tyrants at all, boasting a high degree of decentralization in government structure and autonomy for the kingdom. Member states enjoyed a great deal of self-governance while still protected by the imperial army. This non-tyrannical approach to governance led to a flourishing economy that greatly improved the livelihoods of his people, who came to be well-fed, well-clothed, and highly educated. In fact, the standard of living surpassed that of their European counterparts, who often lived in abject misery. So while Europeans slept among fleas and rats and were trying not to lose their fingers to decay, the people of Mali were thriving. While Musa did have the richest empire in the world, at the time his presence was largely unknown. Come the year 1324, he decided it was finally time to be put on the map. He would embark on his pilgrimage to Mecca, something which all Muslims are expected to complete in their lifetime. Accompanying him on this pilgrimage were 60,000 of his people, all of whom were adorned in expensive fabrics and silks, and each made to carry bars of gold. Of these people, many were drawn from his military, although 12,000 of them were slaves. 500 of them led the caravan, each carrying a staff of pure gold. Alongside him traveled 80 camels, each loaded with 300 pounds of gold. All in all, the sum of his caravan totaled over $1 billion in gold. However, this gold was not just to flaunt, but to spend. Reports indicate that the emperor gave away 20,000 pieces of gold in each of Cairo, Mecca, and Medina, thus injecting so much wealth into the region's economy that it crashed. Following his visit to Mecca, Musa would come to realize he had spent the entirety of his $1 billion pocket. Having no funds for the journey home, he took out a loan from the moneylenders in Cairo, who were thrilled at the enormous interest rates they were going to charge on the massive loan. However, to their disappointment, as soon as Musa returned home, he paid the entire loan off in one lump sum, once again crashing the region's economy, which ultimately did not recover for 12 years. Mansa Musa, with his casual display of unimaginable wealth, had ruined, repaired, and ruined again the gold economy of Africa and the Middle East, and even that of Europe. Thus, making Mansa Musa the only man in recorded history to crash an entire region's economy through sheer generosity. At the time, Mecca was home to some of the finest thinkers of the Islamic world. During his visit, he would recruit experts in architecture, mathematics, philosophy, and poetry, with the vision of transforming Mali into a hub of intellect and culture. For ages, European mapmakers had marked West Africa with drawings of fantastic beasts and empty deserts. However, 50 years after Musa's opulent display of wealth across the Middle East, West Africa was brought to prominence within the world. The famous European map, the Catalan Atlas, showcased Musa and his great empire, depicted with gold in hand, a crown perched atop his head, and at his feet, Timbuktu. A small desert settlement located on the edge of the Sahara, Timbuktu was ideally positioned for traders on the desert frontier of the Malian Empire. The city was flourishing economically, but Musa had envisioned more. In 1325, he ordered the construction of the Gingiber Mosque, as well as the further development of pre-existing mosques throughout the city. This included the renowned Sankore Mosque. Together, these mosques would function as the University of Timbuktu, becoming the core of education and worship within the city. The Sankore Mosque contained between 400,000 to 700,000 manuscripts, making it the largest collection of written texts in Africa since the Library of Alexandria. Some estimate the city held over 1 million books. Free access to books was a social obligation of Timbuktu, as supporting education became a symbol of status. The city's wealthiest residents competed to fund buildings, libraries, and scholarships, just as universities do today. The city of Timbuktu supplied enough housing for over 25,000 students. At the university, numerous subjects were taught, including medicine, surgery, physics, geography, and chemistry. Additionally, the university offered classes in important trades, including business, carpentry, farming, and navigation. However, above all, the primary focus was on Islamic studies, law, and literature. Learning Arabic and West African languages was a mandatory feature of the curriculum, binding cultures all across Africa and the Middle East, and shaping the scholarly Islamic identity that Musa had envisioned for his people. He would send some of his greatest scholars to Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, and Mecca, and in return would receive some of the era's most prominent thinkers. Mansa Musa may be most famous for his wealth in gold, but more importantly, his reign fostered a golden age of thought and culture. It can be stated with fair certainty that the Malayan Empire of the 14th century was far stronger, better organized, and even more literate than any power in Europe.